Hello and welcome to Stocks Down Under. My name is Stuart Roberts and I'm one of the co-founders of our service. And joining me today from Melbourne on the morning of Tuesday, the 30th of May, 2023, is Mr. Aaron Revelle, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Pursuit Minerals, ASX PUR. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning.
Or should I say buenos dias? I suspect you've had enough time to get fluent in Spanish, given how often you go back and forth to Argentina over the last 8 years looking for the big lithium payoff.
I wish I'm more focused on the lithium, but I picked up a few words. But having said that, no, I'm not fluent as yet, and I'm not looking forward. I don't think I'll get there in the foreseeable future, unfortunately.
All right, let's talk a language that we're both fluent in, and that's lithium. Pursuit Minerals has just acquired a pretty significant project in Salar province of northwestern Argentina. Now, for those of us who know the lithium brine space, the Lithium Triangle, Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina. And the big money is on the three provinces in northwestern Chile, Salta, and Catamarca. You've just laid your hands on a resource worth about, potentially, you've got to switch it over to JORC, but maybe 2.1 million tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent on the Rio Grande Salar. Well done on that transaction. How easy was it to get it all together?
Look, it wasn't. I'll be straight up there. It's a very interesting state of play at the moment, and that really comes down to the availability of the projects. As you've mentioned, you've got the Lithium Triangle. There's 50% of the world's lithium resources within that area: Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. If you look at the three participants of that area, in terms of Bolivia, that's very unlikely to ever have a commercialized lithium project, and that's kind of been the widespread consensus opinion for the past couple of years. You then have Chile, which has announced its nationalization incentives. The thoughts are now, is this going to be a soft nationalization or will it be a hard nationalization? So whilst they've announced cooperation and discussions are ongoing with major companies, SQM talking with Codelco, if you revert back to 1971, there was a constitutional amendment. 6 years later, 1977, it was the formation of Codelco, and all the American copper companies had their mines taken from them. The thought process is that to repeat that, if you look at the significance of copper in Chilean GDP terms, copper accounts for about 15% of total GDP. So from that perspective, there is a strong view that the Chilean nationalization plans may actually be a lot harder than over time as the conversation develops than what was first announced.
In which case, Argentina, let's just wave the flag there, is the only game in town, right?
Absolutely. And it really points down to the Argentinian PUR being that area for foreign direct investment. The Argentinian mining minister, Fernanda Avila, came out recently ruling out blanket nationalization. The constitution doesn't allow for it. The provinces regulate and control the mining code. So from that perspective, if you look at Argentina, there's really only about 11 salars. There's a few other little lagunas, but the 11 salars are the high points, and we were able to get a very good tenement position on the Rio Grande Salar, which for us was quite momentous, given that if you're going to be playing in the sandbox, you've got to find a place to play, and we were able to stake a really good position on a project that was significantly de-risked from an exploration side. It already had, as you mentioned, an NI 43-101 resource on the entirety of the Salar. So our project sits within an existing NI 43-101 resource. On top of that, we were able to add a lot of the chemical engineering work from adjacent salars with similar brine chemistry and do some of the groundwork that was required to actually look at processing the lithium. So the project in itself was quite difficult to obtain, as we didn't deal with a public company. We were dealing with local Argentinian vendors, and there were multiple local Argentinian vendors at the same time. So it was a patchwork quilt of individual tenements that, when brought together had the critical mass for a substantial project, which is not exploration. It's a development opportunity in the prime area of the Lithium Triangle at the moment.
Right, and you're now talking comparisons with Argosy and Galant, two companies that have been quite successful on ASX. One's got a market capitalization closer to $1 billion, the other at least $500 million. How do you draw the similarities there?
So really, if you look at the value drivers of these two companies, they have different value drivers. Galant is what I would say is a resource-heavy valuation, where They have a massive, I think it's nearly 8 million ton JORC resource. The project, however, doesn't have the chemical engineering and the production scenario that AGY Argosy have. Argosy have a much smaller resource. It's only around 250,000 tons, and that's a small resource in terms of what is in the triangle, and especially in Argentina. But they have that value driver of a production scenario. So, they've gone from a 100-ton pilot plant to a 2,000-ton plant, which is going through commissioning now at the Rincon project. And as a result of that 2,000-ton plant, and that has a strategic investment from Mitsubishi involved in as well, that's really where you've seen the driver of their market capitalization come from. When we draw our comparisons, Pursuit has both of these in play. So we have the JORC resource potential, which is from that existing NI 43-101. That we're going through our advanced exploration program now over the 6 months towards the end of this year, which will encompass TEM, CSAMT survey, and a substantive drilling campaign, which for us, we're very fortunate as within our resource calculations, once we've finished our own campaign, there's already 5 existing drill cores that will be able to be added by our CP. So we have a good opportunity in terms of resource and resource scale, which will create that first value driver.
Importantly, the resource you've already got, you've only estimated that from the first 100 meters. These salars tend to be rich in lithium right down to about 500 meters.
Well, it's even further. Some, where is the basement? So some people estimate Hombre and Muerto, for example, goes down to nearly 1,000, 1,200, even 1,500 meters. So most people are pumping and having significant intercepts at that 400 to 600 meter profile. So, and there's also another thematic, which is very common, which it was seen on Pastos Grandes, which is when you actually drill, the deeper you go, the lithium content increases. So as you're increasing, and let's say there's a factor of 5 scalability that's just on the base rate of your lithium, you're not factoring in additional lithium grade that obviously increases the tons. So, from that perspective, you could have the Rio Grande Salar could hold anywhere from 2 million, which is that base rate at 100 meters now. It could go as high as 10 million, 15 million tons. Pozuelos, which is a very similar size in that sort of 25-kilometer strike north to south, that has a resource of 16 million tons. So, from that perspective, you could have a very high resource, especially on our ground, because we're right in the main depot center, which is one of the where the concentration of the lithium aquifers is. So we're very fortunate that for us, something over 1 million tons, could be a possibility for us, which is, as I stated, that's 5 times the size of the Argosy resource if we can get it to that level. However, going back to Argosy, the real driver of Argosy is the production piece, which for us, we just optioned up to acquire an existing lithium carbonate pilot plant, which if you go back to 2018, when Argosy announced they had produced their first 10 kilos from their pilot plant at 100 tons, the market cap in 2018 was $350 to $400 million. So for us to be having that milestone also on the horizon, as the plant is fully permitted, it's fully operational, it's ready to go in the city of Salta, which when we commence our pumping wells, we'll be taking the brine from the Puna down to start that process. We have a lot of immediate near-term activity that could have some significant re-rating events for us in terms of the value drivers, being both that production piece, but also the resource piece that those two companies are driven by, their valuations are driven by.
Let's talk about the location. Salta City is about 300 kilometers in one direction. The Chilean port of Antofagasta, about 300 in the other direction, roughly. So this is a remote part of South America. But there's grid power available and gas pipelines in the neighborhood. How well placed are you infrastructure-wise?
Look, we're very fortunate in terms of there already being a significant project under construction called Mariana, which is in the Jujai-Jaca Salar, about 50 to 25 kilometers north of us. That's a 20,000-ton plant being built by Ganfeng. So a lot of the public access infrastructure for a 20,000-ton plant that we can fortunately tap into has already been done. There are paved roads. There are, now camps and accommodation, which, pumping wells for water, things like that. So the area, whilst it might be remote, and it's 4,000 meters above sea level up in the mountains. We're not back in 2008 where these salars were basically not being worked on. There's a lot of activity in the salar. Rio Grande in itself has a couple of other companies that are exploring there, that have camps there. So from that perspective, there's also, there's several companies getting to that sort of 20,000 ton production level. You've got Allkem at Olaroz, for example. They've got a 20,000 ton plant. Livent with Fenix, that's a 20,000 ton plant as well. So the availability of public access infrastructure and it is there. Also, that the workforce is available in Salta as well. And from that perspective, there is some ground, and obviously when you're building your own project, you need to link it all together. But having said that, the PUR is attracting a lot of development, a lot of capital, and we're starting to see the results of that infrastructure there now.
All right. Now, your market cap is a mere not even 50 million yet, and in part that's because this is a recent transaction to get hold of your project. Yeah. You've flagged the potential for some pretty significant resource increases, and we've talked about the early production from the plant that you've just acquired. Let's close the last link in the chain. Tell me about the people who are working with you on this project and the smarts they've got to be able to move forward.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you look at our board, starting there, we have Pete Wall, who is our chair. Pete's a very well-known resources lawyer in the sector, and fortunately for us, he's a great value addition to have as chairing our board, and that's something that was a big attraction for us in terms of the original team bringing this project to Pursuit. Alongside Pete, you also have Tom Eady. Tom Eady is very well known from his time as chairman of Syra Resources, which was a graphite play that went from a 15 mil to $1 billion market cap. And Tom was instrumental in seeing that project up the project life cycle and getting that from exploration into development. On ground in country, we have myself. I've worked in various lithium companies for over the past 10 years or so, and have a lot of experience in country, in ground, and was able to actually put the whole transaction together. Unfortunately, I've got some of my team members who I've worked with in the past. For example, my 2IC, Alex Rodriguez. He was a senior VP at Rincon Lithium that was purchased by Rio Tinto, and he was part of that team with the Sentient Group for many years that developed that project. Through its NI 43-101, through its pilot plant operation, and actually operated the plant with the Rincon team that was at that site. So having Alex, who's a dual Argentinian Australian citizen, speaks the language. For us, we have a very competent in-ground, in-country team that has done this before. Added both at board level, a very significant board filled with guys who have got the experience in developing these micro cap companies up to the more mature stage, but also in-country, in-technical team that have worked on lithium. This isn't an ASX company that's just gone and bought a project in Argentina and it's our first rodeo. Both Alex is Argentinian, and I've been there since 2008 from the Rincon days as well. So from that perspective, we're very well placed to develop this project and advance it very quickly. Right.
What's motivated you to pursue so much of your career, looking for the big payoff in Argentinian lithium?
To be frank, when I started in 2008 in lithium, it wasn't what it is now. You go back to the schematics and the end uses. A lot of it was actually glass and ceramics, and right. I'll never forget the first and pharmaceuticals as well. Absolutely. That was also on there. But you had the first electric car, which was Vincent Bollore's blue car in 2008, which was Mr. Bean looking thing with 3 wheels and an electric battery, and I think it went 50 Ks on a single charge. Where right. I've been very fortunate for starting my career in a space that has evolved into what it is now. I mean, lithium in itself is a prime example of becoming too big to ignore. The majors are starting to look at this space, and if you look at where we are in the cycle, you're starting to see, for example, Vale's base metal unit. Vale, the Brazilian iron ore giant, its base metal unit made $500 million US of EBITDA, whereas Albemarle announced $3 billion of EBITDA in the last financial year. So from that perspective, I've been fortunate to go through this cyclical evolution where companies like Tesla have come in to disrupt the EV supply chain. You're starting to see now the majors like Albemarle and SQM, they'll often acquire on the back of EV growth. So, Biden's new legislation, pushing that critical minerals path is another example of just fortunately being, for me, in the right space at the right time. It's not come without its challenges. We've had a few waves and a few cycles, 2015 to 2017, 2018. Was that sort of first lithium, push. Tesla became quite well known. But for me, I've just been very fortunate to be in a space and operating in a sector that is starting really at the real infancy of its critical minerals development. I think that the next 10 years, 15 years, there's quite a lot of time to run in that lithium story. We've hit 10 million electric cars sales last year. For the first quarter of 2023, the highest selling car was Tesla. So, from that perspective, it's just been very fortunate to be in the right space, sometimes at the wrong time. 2018 was a very painful time for lithium companies and lithium players, but it looks like now that lithium is going for quite a run and a resurgence. So it's being in the right space at the right time there.
Right. So I was looking in my dictionary last night under the word optimistic, and there was a photograph of you there. Now, you talked about ups and downs. You've had some downs as well. You formed a company called Centaur on the Pastos Grandes Salar. We're forced, unfortunately, to sell out at the wrong time to Arena, a Canadian company, which is now doing quite well with that asset. So, as you say, timing is everything, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Centaur was put together in the same way that the Pursuit project was put together. A few differences. Centaur didn't have as much advanced exploration information. But having said that, that was a phenomenal project. And, that was sold at the bottom of the cycle to Arena for, I think, 23 million Australian. And then 2 years later, with very minimal work, very minimal development, Arena goes and sells it to Lithium Americas for 340 million Australian dollars, which, that's right place at the right time. So, whilst there's certain optimism, I think that the transactions in the space are very, very compelling and very precedent over the past year. I mean, you're seeing a lot of these valuations since that 2008 level. They're starting to get quite serious. You've seen tier one players like Rio Tinto. They came in and bought Rincon. When we were doing Centaur, Rio Tinto went into space. There was very much that focus on the JDAR project, but now you've got Rio Tinto,
which obviously hasn't worked out so well, right?
No, it hasn't, and I think that's kind of ironic given the chemical element symbol for jadarite is the same as kryptonite in the Superman comics. So, from that perspective, you're seeing, Rio Tinto now go, okay, we've turned away from that. They've purchased Rincon, and they also have in their decks, that they're looking aggressively for M&A. So is it a level of optimism? Absolutely. I think we're going through that stage now. But having said that, the market has definitely turned, and I think that's in the consumer. Confidence behind electric vehicle sales. That's been, there wasn't 10 million cars being sold in 2018. Right. Electric vehicles are becoming more common. Tesla wall packs for electricity storage are becoming more common. So as these products begin to get market share, it starts going down the value chain of where is this lithium coming from? Where is it actually being sourced? And I think that there's now a recognition in investor education that lithium oxide isn't lithium carbonate. It's not lithium hydroxide. It's an oxide that goes through a chemical converter or reactor to turn the end product. And there's more intricacy in the understanding and knowledge base of lithium, which for us is now pushing a lot of these valuations because, as stated, there's only 11 salars in Argentina. There's a few more lagunas that have the brine, but once you get outside of those core salars, there's no more real estate. So there's mass demand, but very limited supply. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can always take the nationalization risk with Chile and see if you can do something there, have a pump with Bolivia, absolutely. But for the arguably more safe money, looking at a jurisdiction that's open for foreign investment, Argentina is a very closed area in terms of what you can actually acquire, what actually has lithium. And Centaur's a case in point. That Pastos Grandes Salar is completely consolidated by Lithium Americas. You can't get on the Salar. That's their main project. They have 95% of it. I believe there's only one or two tenements that are owned by Ganfeng, who own Pozuelos in its entirety next door, that are apparently being divested to LAC. So being able to actually get this, the real estate's 50% of the challenge. And for us, I think we're only going to see real estate prices go up when it comes to lithium projects now over the coming years.
Right. Aaron Revelle, the man who we think is in the right place at the right time. Keep up the good work, and we look forward to the big news flow from Pursuit Minerals.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.